Hey, so this is Liberto here, and I am excited to just offer you some support and to really equip you with a really basic conversation that you can utilize with dads, with yourself as a father, or with dads that you're going to be ministering to. And it all focuses around the sex talk. So I run a ministry and we do kind of all things sexual integrity. And so we created this resource for dads and for parents to have the sex talk with their kids. But there are three main things that are the takeaways from the entire thing that I'm going to give to you right now. And then we'll break them down a little bit so that you can kind of disseminate this and just have quick, actionable, hey, let's have the talk with our kids resources here. So there are 3 points that I want you to remember as a dad. Step number one, or point number one, is early and often. With your children, if you maintain or develop or begin to have a posture of early and often with conversations around sex, sexuality, anatomy, terms, right? Like we want to, as dads, be the first person that is sharing information with our child, because we don't want culture, we don't want television, we don't want radio, any God forbid, online pornography. We don't want our children to learn about these things or about any level of these things from culture. So that's why early and often matters. And when I say early and often, here's what I mean. Around the age of 6, if you can help it, Dad, I want you to start having the conversation around biology, anatomy, and God's design. And then simply you're just going to have age-appropriate conversations for a decade plus with your child. And your goal is simply to be the first one that is getting to them before culture. So point number one, early and often with the sex talk, equipping your children. Point number two, it is offense and defense. Okay, you care about your child immensely. So defense is going to come really naturally to you. You want to protect your child. You want to shield them from any possible harm that they could potentially ever encounter. So defense, we almost don't have to explain. Defense around the sex talk looks pretty basic. Have some filters on devices in the house, make sure they're not going to bed with smartphones or technology in their rooms. Really just logical, basic level defense around protecting your children in kind of all things sex and sexuality. But the offense piece in point number two is the thing most people miss. And so with offense, you have to have a game plan prepared, because no sports team, whatever one you want to think of, ever wins with exclusive defense. And no team wins with exclusive offense. You have to have both. So what does offense look like? It kind of goes back to that early and often point. Offense looks like having conversations prepared, having icebreakers prepared, engaging with your children or your child, whichever one you're engaging with at the time, in specific ways where you are initiating these conversations. My friend Kent Evans has a really good and easy icebreaker in this offense, and it involves asking your child, hey, do you know what the word sexy means? Now, that's just one very small example of an idea of how to create this offensive game plan in your children's life as the parent. So remember, you're going to have defense. It's going to be easy. It's going to be great. But offense is the thing I want you to think about. So sit down with your spouse. If you're the only parent, you can still make this game plan. But just take a little bit and jot down some ideas of offensive ways you can initiate with your child around the sex talk. This is not just the limiting, here is how babies are made, right? When we say the sex talk in this conversation, we're talking about everything: pornography, lust, masturbation, unwanted sexual behaviors, right? Like anything in the world anything that we do with our bodies as far as sex and sexuality goes, that's what we're talking about. So dad, early and often, and then offense and defense. Then the final point that I want you to really process, arguably the hardest point, is going to be, it's not if, but when your child is exposed to hardcore pornography or other very dangerous sexual things in our culture. It's not if, but when they will be exposed. And so if you can wrap your mind around that as a dad, it's not if, but when, your entire game plan changes. Because what you're going to now do and what your job is to prepare your child for that when. For when they are exposed. For, it could be different, right? For some children, it could be on the school bus with a friend handing them a smartphone with a video of hardcore illicit pornography on it. For someone else, it could be exposed to hookup culture in their public school, right? So we don't know what exactly the when is, and we don't know when the when is going to happen. But as a parent, you need to equip your child to respond in that moment. And so that's what we're thinking about right now. What is the response you want your child to have? Well, if you have done early and often, and if you have done offense and defense, you want to create this conversation in your child's life that, hey, mom and dad are safe. Hey, if I have any questions at all, they have encouraged me to come to them and share that with them. They have told me over and over again, because you've been having these early and often conversations over a decade, that if I'm ever uncomfortable or if something's going wrong around my sex and sexuality, or if I'm struggling with something, they've invited me to come and they said they're going to help. And so that's what we're talking about with this not if, but when example. It's not an example, it's a reality. So I want you to process your child. Think about them right now, right? They're going to have this situation happen to them, and it breaks our hearts. But when it happens, how do you want your son or your daughter to respond, Dad? How do you want, if you have a daughter and your daughter has a boyfriend and that boyfriend wants to sleep with her, because that's how we express love in our culture today, and it is totally false. How do you want her to answer that request? Or if you have a son and he has teenage friends and they're in the locker room and they're all laughing over, giggling over a video on a smartphone, and someone shows it to your son and it's hardcore illicit pornography. What do you want him to do in that situation? That is what you are preparing your child for in the not if, but when. So in summary, as a dad, we want to have the sex talk early and often, starting around the age of 6. We want to have both an offense and a defense. We don't just want to play pure defense and lock our children in a closet. Sheltering them is not the answer. Why? Well, because it's not if, but when. No matter how amazing of a parent you are, no matter how much you love and protect your children, they are going to be exposed to harsh realities of the world around us. And that does look like broken sexuality. So Dad, it's your job to protect and to equip and to prepare and to teach. And in this area, it is a great opportunity for you to step in as the leader. Mom, if mom is present, can and should be involved as well, but Dad, you can be the first mover on this, right? So begin to process this. There is no perfect way. The Holy Spirit is going to pick it up, and he's going to do and use and work through you. But we just need you to, kind of like Nike says, just do it. So you got this, Dad.